Welcome back to War Room Pandemic. This is our special Descent into Hell Part 3. The Chinese people confront the Chinese Communist Party. We're distributed everywhere in our podcast, over 6.5 million downloads, and we're ubiquitous on America's Voice. That's channel 219 on the Dish Network, also on Newsmax TV later. I want to thank John Frederick's Radio Network for being our co-producer, and John Frederick's personally a great guy, the oracle of the deplorables. I now think I'm going to actually have some Chinese people. I'm going to stop my rant. Somehow, this whole thing has triggered me, and I'll tell you why. This is what we're going to be remembered for. We're not going to remember for anything else. This is what we're going to be remembered for. The great confrontation of the free people of the West in a dictatorship that has enslaved their own people, and we went along with it. We financed it. We gave it its technology, and the reason was we did it for, as Jack Maxey reminded me during the break, for money. We did it for money. It's just not acceptable. And now we got to be sorry. Look what it's done to the country. Look at the economic carnage. Look at the blood. 52,000. We'll be as many dead as in Vietnam, right? We'll be as many dead as Vietnam by Monday. In Vietnam was 9 or 10 years. This has been 9 or 10 weeks, right? And it's not stopping. That's the whole thing in Politico today. It's not going to stop. The model, the 60,000 is supposed to be the whole first wave. It's just going to keep on. It's going to keep on. We're at a plateau now. It's not going to keep at this level, but the plateau is what fooled them, right? They didn't. Jack was saying, "Hey, I think they think their model's up," and some guys, other guys, had straight down to zero. That didn't happen. Here's the reason: we know very little about this virus. They're mocking President Trump for the UV and for the light and for the bleach. Hey, who knows? That's what we keep saying. You ought to step up there and have all therapeutics. Have a list of we ought to be looking at 1,000 things. And no, I'm not saying take a pod and start sucking on a bleach pod. No. But the UV, you don't know. There's some stuff out today. The guys are looking at this long term. We don't know. We ought to be funding all those therapies. We ought to be funding all these different potentials for testing and for antibodies testing. We ought to do it all. I don't happen to think there's going to be a vaccine anytime certain. And we're going to find out as this thing mutates. It's got different things they're talking about now in the Washington Post. A huge story today. People in their 20s and 30s, when they get it, they're dying of strokes. Right? They're dying of strokes. We don't know. We know very little about this. It's just come upon us. We know very little about it. But I'll tell you one thing, and I'm just backing up what the Nobel Prize winner from 2014, the French doctor, he's saying he's backing up the guys at IIT we had back on the show in January, that this did not come in God's plan, okay? There was human intervention somehow. I don't know, but I do know when a smart guy says that over and over and over and again, the IIT guy said we should look at that, and you see this thing mutating and nobody can get control of it, right? And now I want to bring – and think about this. You're just getting it in your grill here in the last 10 or 12 weeks. The Chinese people, a civilization that's 4,000 years old, lives under this boot every day. Finance, you got to embrace this. When I say financed by the West, this is the audience, you have to embrace it. Financed by your money. Remember, the hedge funds and the banks, it's all pension fund and insurance company money. It's called institutional money. That institution is the cops, the firemen, the nurses, the teachers, you at your companies. They all manage pension fund money. The reason this is a Greek tragedy is because by our own hand we were smitten. Our institutions on Wall Street, our corporations that are all supported by institutions. Zuckerberg had no money when he starts off. He got venture capital money. The venture capital got the venture capitalists. Those guys in Silicon Valley don't have the money. They manage the money. They manage your money. It was your money that did this. You didn't know that because nobody told you. That's why it's not a conspiracy. It's in plain sight. This is plain sight. The problem with the conspiracy is it's all kook stuff. You don't have to be kooky. Just look at the way the system works. This was the pension fund money of the deplorables that financed all the factories going over to China and left you with no jobs, right? And the opioids coming in and destroying the working class in these states. This is the reason Donald Trump's president. The managed decline. Thucydides' trap. Kissinger and all the geniuses. Thucydides' trap is just a fancy word for managed decline. They're the rising power. We're the declining power, right? The declining power's got to kind of nudge them to be more like we are, with the elites making money the entire time. That's the story here. Not a conspiracy. Pretty straightforward in plain sight. I want to turn now to John, who is now a free man because he's a citizen of the United States of America. He's Chinese, born in China. Family's still there. That's what we have to be very careful about how we present these guys. John, thank you very much for joining us on War and Pandemic. I'm finally glad to get you on. I'll stop my rants and let you finally have something to say. But tell people, what is it? Why is it so tough for people in China to confront the Chinese Communist Party?
Yes, sir. Good morning, Mr. Bannon. Yeah, thank you for having me on your show. By the way, the speech you just made like before the 11 o'clock is very powerful. And yes, it is getting very difficult, and actually it's more difficult for the Chinese people to confront the CCP. The fact is the Chinese Communist Party has controlled nearly all aspects of the economic, political, and the social life in China. The control is only getting tighter. So last year alone, the CCP spent $119 billion US on maintaining its social stability, public security, and harmonizing those who criticize or simply tell the truth against party's will. Okay, that is why the eye Dr. Li Wenliang and other 7 heroes were silenced in December 2019 when the outbreak started in Wuhan, who simply shared what they knew about the virus and its human-to-human transmission with friends and colleagues. So when the situation was out of control, the CCP decided to lock down the whole city. That means no information can get in and get out of the city. So everybody has to stay at home. And remember, during the Wuhan lockdown, the people of Wuhan, they were protesting from their balcony, lack of food and supplies, shouting out they are lies to the vice premier of China. And when she did a political show and visit the local community, okay, the CCP is always afraid letting people know the truth. Instead of trying to solve the social conflicts, it chose to cover up the problem and the truth. This time, the CCP hid the nature of this virus and held back the data and the information from telling its own people and the world. Now we have the global pandemic. Up to now, we have 2.7 million people are infected and 190,000 people died of this virus. Remember, this is not the first time CCP lied. I hope this will be the last time the CCP covered up the police brutality when cracking down the demonstration in Hong Kong, arresting dozens of thousands of protesters, killing thousands of freedom-loving young people, and really turning Hong Kong, a city one with the rule of law and autonomy, into a police state. It did that when the CCP imprisoned 2 million Uyghurs and put up massive surveillance in Xinjiang and in Tibet. So the whole reason why the world can see or hear those fights from the Chinese people because the CCP's the Great Firewall. So it is the most extensive and sophisticated system in the whole world. It blocked the website content, monitor your internet access, use human and bots to spread CCP lies and fake news, even use it to demonize American values and democracy. So if we put that in a simple way, the CCP put up this firewall just because they're afraid of people of China tell the world the crimes the CCP committed against its own people and how evil they are. The firewall will also stop the world from telling the Chinese people what is actually going on in the world so that CCP can keep lying to its own people.
John, could you?
Thank you, sir.
Yeah, John, I'd like you just to. We've got some time here. I want to ask you about this concept of the social credit score, this total electronic surveillance they have the Chinese people, and particularly go back to Dr. Li's story. They tortured him and forced him to sign a confession that he would admit to being a rumor monger. Walk us through how important was that, and how bad is that in life in China if you're forced to do that?
Yes. So if the social credit system, it literally is this massive surveillance system. Right? They use all the system like Skynet, and they also use some other platform like the WeChat, and also the QQ from the Tencent. They were the CCP surveillance tool to monitor your activity online, right? So once the police will track your activity, will find out who you are. They will knock your door and even call you to go to the police station to confess, to admit the crimes you made simply telling the truth online. Okay, so the punishment can be very severe because once you sign the admonishment letter, right, now you are in the system. Okay, so what they can do is they can simply, deny your access to buy airline tickets, to buy train tickets. That means you cannot get out of your city. You are literally confined to your local. And by doing that, there's no way for you to get help. There for you even to, spread the information to other people anymore. So this is how the evil and the powerful system is.
John, we got a couple of minutes, so 2 minutes here. I want you to go through how can the American people. We have a big audience of deplorables. We are listened to by the political class and the hedge fund guys and the news producers, but our most important audience is the Trump base and, quite frankly, a lot of the Bernie Sanders economic nationalists. What can the American people do to assist their brothers and sisters in China so that they can achieve their freedom?
Yes, sir. So as a matter of fact, the people in the West can do a lot of things to help, but I want to begin with the easiest one. That is, please do not trust any propaganda from the CCP, whether it's from domestic or from overseas, right? They are street lies. The people in the West should ask one very simple question. If the CCP dictator regime doesn't treat its own citizens with any respect and any human dignity, why the people in the West expect themselves to be treated any differently? Second, we need more people from the West like you, Mr. Bannon. And your war room, your fantastic crew, Jack Maxey, Jason Miller, Rahim Kassam, who give the American the facts, the truth, and give Chinese people your support that bring them the hope. That is why the VOG, we translate your show every day. We add Chinese subtitles, put them on the GTV so the more folks from China get to know you and your great show. I also want to see that Chinese people are especially grateful to President Trump, Secretary of State Mike Pompeo, Peter Navarro, Senator Tom Cotton, and those who know this is not about Chinese people. So they are being tough to the CCP, making sure when this is over, CCP must be held accountable for this pandemic crisis. So lastly, I want to see is the most urgent thing above all for the West to do to help the Chinese people is to take down that firewall. As long as the wall is there, there will be no truth. The CCP keep using this firewall to demonize the American value and democracy. Tearing down that wall should be the key response from the West to take down the CCP. Thank you, sir.
John, thank you very much. You're a great patriot. You're a great patriot to your brothers and sisters in China where you were born, and you're a great patriot to the United States, which is the country that you've adopted. So we want to thank you very much for your heroism every day. Thank you very much for coming on. President Reagan.
Thank you, sir. God bless you.
Thank you, John. President Reagan said it back in the 80s. How about this as a strategy? We win, they lose. Tear down this wall. That's what he said in Berlin at the Brandenburg Gate. That's what we're saying here. The Chinese are saying, tear down this firewall. We're going to return in just a moment.
War Room Pandemic with Stephen K. Bannon.
The epidemic is a demon, and we cannot let this demon hide.
War Room Pandemic. Here's your host, Stephen K. Bannon.
Descent into Hell Part 3. The Chinese people confront the Chinese Communist Party. We're live on Capitol Hill in our nation's capital, Washington, D.C. We're going to get another Chinese dissident on here in a second and let you know how the CCP rolls against its own people. I think what John, our last guest, said was so powerful. If you want to see how they'll run the world, look at how they treat their own people, the lack of dignity, the lack of respect, the slavery they put the Chinese people in. And that's how you see how they're going to do. That's why this pandemic is just an opening, a taste of how they roll. Jack, we got some breaking news.
Some more interesting thing. We've been talking a lot over the last weeks how this sort of cracks in the facade concerning the world's opinion of the CCP. And out of Tanzania just yesterday, the president, John Magufuli, said that no on the Bridge and Belt and Road program. They were going to rebuild a port in Tanzania. It was going to cost $10 billion. The Chinese wanted a 99-year lease and all sorts of other things. He said, forget it. We don't want your port. We don't want your debt slavery. And we're watching this happen everywhere.
This is the countries in the third world, particularly in Africa, in the Caribbean, are starting to wake up to the fact of what the Chinese Communist Party is doing. It's the British East India Company in reverse. What they're doing is to bribe elites, right? Kind of what they did here, bribe the elites, and then put in so much debt, predatory capitalism, put in so much debt that they can't pay it back, foreclose on the debt, and then take the ports, take the railroads, take all the infrastructure they built. Just take it and they control it. And now you're seeing leaders like throughout the world, these developing countries saying, hey, I need the money for development. I want to do things for our people, but I'm not taking this money.
Well, and the other thing is also in the midst of this crisis, right? They canceled the G20 meeting because they don't want to deal with the World Health Organization. But quietly over the last 3 days, they just named and essentially declared sovereign property 80 underwater geographic features in the South China Sea. And so there's two programs, right? The public program of the CCP and the behind-the-scenes scam that they're playing across the world. And the world is waking up to this.
I'll be on Jesse Waters' show tonight in the A block right after Jesse does his opening monologue to talk about the Chinese Communist Party and the war that they have now, the information and the economic war that they are engaged, this hot war against the West. So Jesse and I talk about that. One of the things we bring up is the South China Sea. I think it was in 2015 when I was doing the radio show over at Sirius XM for the Breitbart radio show. I had a guest on. I talked about it. I think it was in 15 that I'd sailed. I'd been in the South China Sea on a Navy destroyer in the 7th Fleet back in the late 70s, mid-70s, late 70s. And I said, hey, in 5 or 10 years, we're going to be in a shooting war in the South China Sea with the Chinese Communist Party and their Navy. They're trying to make that an internal sea. This is why they had such a big controversy when President Trump was president-elect, and he said he took a call. A president-elect of the United States took a call from an old ally, Taiwan, took a phone call, a congratulatory phone call from the president of Taiwan. These guys went through full meltdown. They went through full meltdown, and we met with them. They had the 7-dotted thing. They think that South China Sea, one of the most important bodies of water in the world, into your daily economic life, the South China Sea. They say it's an internal sea of ours. They say, hey, this is ours. This is why the Philippines are up in arms. This is why all the littoral nations. You heard Luttwak, and by the way, I'm going to be doing a special, 1-hour special with Professor Luttwak. We're going to actually do it today and put it up hopefully this afternoon or throughout this. It's going to be a special, War Room special, on the geopolitics of the war against the Chinese Communist Party. He's the top geopolitical thinker in the world. Professor Edward Luttwak, you guys loved him so much last week that we're going to have him back, but he's going to walk through this whole thing. And remember, the first examples he was bringing up were Malaysia and Vietnam and the Philippines and Indonesia. Those nations around that body of water down there don't trust the Chinese Communist Party and know that they're coming to take their sovereignty, right? This is about free men and free women throughout the world. Is freedom perfect throughout the world? No, freedom is not perfect. Not perfect here. It's a very messy democracy, right? But it is at least a democracy. And this is what the people in China, the people under the boot of these jackals and gangsters in Beijing. And why are they jackals and gangsters? If they were decent people, as the Southampton University report says, 95% of all the deaths, 95% of all the economic carnage could have been solved by one thing. All they had to do was just to tell the world and admit there was community transmission, community spread, and human-to-human transmission in late December, early January. This could have all been avoided. It could have all been avoided. Why did they not do that? We're going to find out at the end of the day because they didn't want you to find out where it came from, okay? If they weren't trying to hide where it came from, if it was just a wet market, if it was just simply a wet market, they would have come forward right away, okay? Why didn't they come forward right away? They're trying to hide it. Why did they cancel the G20 conference call yesterday? We need the countries of the world, the 20 biggest economies, to work in unison as individual sovereign nations to pull us out of the economic carnage caused by this pandemic and to work together to make sure that with this pandemic doesn't spread more. We need that to work together. Everybody admits that. The Chinese Communist Party cancels the call. Why do they cancel the call? Because the United States of America, President Trump and Pompeo, put on the agenda, what's on the agenda? The World Health Organization. What about that tweet on the 14th of January of 2020? That tweet says we've been in communication and the Chinese Communist Party health minister tells us there's no human-to-human transmission and no community spread. That is a stone-cold lie. The reason you're in your house today on a beautiful spring day, the reason that if you're Jewish you weren't able to celebrate Passover, if you're Muslim you can't do Ramadan, and if you're a Christian you couldn't celebrate in a community the risen Christ on Easter Sunday, because the atheists of the Chinese Communist Party that hate any religion lied. And here's why they lied. They lied because they didn't want the World Health Organization and our CDC and the Imperial College in London and Dr. Gabriel Leung at Hong Kong University, all the great brains of the world, the minds of the world, the virus hunters. They didn't want them in there. They still won't let them. They don't want them in there. Why do they want them in there? Because it didn't come from a wet market. Okay, we all know it didn't come from a wet market. Okay, we know it didn't come from a wet market. Now I want to pivot to Dr. Bo. Dr. Bo, you've had to live on, you're now a naturalized American citizen, but you were born and raised in China. Many of your family members are there. How is it the CCP, how do they actually control the good people, our brothers and sisters in China? How are they controlled by the Chinese Communist Party?
Hello, Mr. Bannon. Well, the Communist Party, the CCP, they control people using two different methods. One is they're working on the internal, the mind control. They brainwash the people from a very young age, even kindergarten. When we were in kindergarten, we have to recite, I love my country, I love the people, I love Chinese Communist Party every day. So that's how the brainwash started. They divided people and they keep this brainwashing thing going all through the whole education, all the way through college, even graduate schools. So all the political side of the classes are a required class, throughout the education. So what they are doing is they try to push a ideology, they themselves don't even believe in. So this is just a total lie from the beginning. It doesn't make sense, from a very young age to the adults. They keep brainwashing people using their media, using their education system, using all kinds of, things people can access every day. And they shut off the people's access to the real world, to real knowledge by using the firewall. And then on the other side, they build probably the world's strongest state apparatus. Okay, they control every aspect of people's life. They call this to maintain the polity called 维稳, means maintain political stability. Okay, Jun already mentioned this, that in 2019 the fund to maintain the political stability is like a 1.5 trillion RMB or something like that, in trillions. And this number is even higher than their military spending. So this is crazy, just to control people's mind. And on the hardware side, it is even more scary on the hardware side. They did this kind of like a sky network of CCTVs, the surveillance system. They watch every single piece of people's life. Okay, I think from a report, they installed 400 million cameras all across the country. They watch you when if you're a foreigner, you land in the airport, they watch you. You come out of the airport, you go into the taxi, they watch you. You check into your hotel, they watch you. They watch you all the time. There is a BBC reporter did one interesting test, is that if he wants to run away, if he wants to escape, how fast the system can catch him. And the number is 7 minutes. If you try to run away from the CCTV system, they will catch you in 7 minutes. A fresh face, because they use AI, they use all these technologies they stole from the West to recognize people's face. They recognize people's voice. They can pinpoint your location by this Sky network of CCTVs in under 7 minutes. This is how scary it is. So this is what kind of environment Chinese people are living. And they always say that if you do not make any mistakes, if you do not cross the line, you're fine, right? But the CCP draws the line. They can move the line any day, to closer or farther. You don't know where the line is. You have no idea when or where you will be crossing the line, and you will be in trouble.
Dr. Bo, hang on. I want to hold you over the commercial break. We're going to have you join us because I got more questions to go through about why they do this to the great Chinese people, this ancient civilization. They move the line.
Thank you.
Remember, they can move the line anytime they want. That's what a dictatorship does. Hashtag War Room Pandemic. We want to hear all your comments, your observations, and questions you would like to have answered. We're going to take a short commercial break. We'll return. Descent into Hell Part 3. The Chinese people confront the Chinese Communist Party.
War Room Pandemic with Stephen K. Bannon.
The epidemic is a demon, and we cannot let this demon hide.
War Room Pandemic. Here's your host, Stephen K. Bannon.
Episode 139, War Room Pandemic. This is our special, third Saturday in a row. It's Descent into Hell Part 3. The Chinese people confront the Chinese Communist Party. A couple of programming notes tonight. I'll be on Jesse Waters. I think it's 8 o'clock is Jesse's show at 8 o'clock on Fox News. Jesse will start off. He's got an amazing monologue that I think everybody should hear. And then I will be on to discuss my favorite topic, the Chinese Communist Party. So I'll be on Jesse tonight. We'll talk about the woke America as this Pew study, which the mainstream media anytime a Pew comes out with something negative about President Trump, it's the headline in the New York Times and the Washington Post. Just saying, right? When they actually mention about the American people shifting on the center of gravity and now understanding the Chinese Communist Party is the greatest threat, the existential threat to free men and women in the entire world, crickets. Why is that? That's called kowtowing to the China. They're afraid. They're afraid of having their operations thrown out of China. They're afraid of being shut down. They're afraid of no investments in their company. It's a complete scam. It's a racket. Okay, it's a racket. We're going to peel back the layers, layer upon layer of the racket, and point to who are collaborators, who have helped us who's helped the Chinese Communist Party jam us up into the system. Before we get back to Dr. Bo, we've got some breaking news. Mr. Jack Maxey, Mr. Greg Manns.
Some stuff from the Philippines, which again I think is a really interesting show about the cracks concerning the relationship of the Chinese Communist Party with the rest of the world. The ambassador of the Philippines put out a music video showing the love between the Chinese people and the Filipinos and how they were going to rescue them from the virus that they gave them. But what was interesting is they had a refrain in the song that says, "You and me belong to one sea," and almost immediately the Filipinos went bananas. They're saying, "What if we say two Chinas?" And
that's the South China Sea. They're trying to claim.
Yes,
they're trying to claim it's ours.
Same along with what they did earlier this weekend with naming all of the underwater features as Chinese.
What's happening in Korea? Breaking news out of South Korea. Or North Korea, I guess.
The breaking news out of North Korea is obviously the question concerning whether or not
stay focused with
whether or not Kim is on his deathbed or not. We seem to be getting some conflicting stories. The Japanese say that they hear he's brain dead. We're getting from the Straits Times that he seems to be okay, and the South Koreans China,
the Japanese major Japanese news sources are saying that he's in a coma. He's brain dead.
Yes.
The Straits Times was out of Singapore. Remember, the Straits Times in Singapore, the South China Morning Post out of Hong Kong, and then the Japanese paper, and of course the Taiwan News Service are the four great organs of free speech over there. Although the South China Morning Post is owned by Jack Ma, who's pure CCP.
Right.
But Straits Times, what are they saying?
The South Koreans are actually saying that they are finding that there is no intelligence coming out of North Korea that says there's a crisis going on. So they're assuming that he's in decent shape. But what's interesting
if he's not a crisis, but what a
the
delegation.
Chinese Foreign Office sent a delegation to North Korea last night to consult with the government concerning various things. They believe that there was also a medical delegation that went along with them, but it does show that there's some crisis brewing there, and we should all keep an eye on it.
China controls it's North Korea, Pakistan's their partner, the Iranians, the Persians, Turkey, and Russia. That's the group. That's their side of the football.
Big
Yes, sir.
crack in Pakistan, too. We may as well get it all out
Let's
today.
go.
Pakistan is part of the Belt and Road program, the debt slavery for the third world from the Communist Chinese Party. And they have massive investments from China inside Pakistan, and they requested yesterday a 10-year extension on any loan payments for about $10 billion that they owe the Chinese Communist Party. Now, what's really interesting is, as Pakistan's suffering under this virus, China has been scrambling to try and run this PR campaign in conjunction with the Pakistani government to convince everybody they're all friends. But what they're realizing is that they're not. And the Chinese laborers who are supposed to be in Pakistan to fix all these projects aren't coming back. There's questions as to whether or not they're going to be allowed to be returned in the country. And I think I said it 3 or 4 weeks ago, watch the relationship between Pakistan and China, because if that starts to fall apart,
It could all come unravel. By the way, the mullahs, the Chinese oil company in the loans is the only thing that keeps the mullahs. The sanctions that President Trump has had on has choked down the mullahs. That's what Soleimani was flying around to Beirut and into Baghdad to put down these revolts in the street. The revolt in the street in Tehran, they think they killed 1,500 demonstrators back in December. That revolt is because President Trump's sanctions are choking down the mullahs in Persia. And who's their partners? The Chinese Communist Party. It's that oil company that keeps them in business, those loans. So those speedboats are all around there as the Fifth Fleet and the Seventh Fleet patrol the North Arabia in the Persian Gulf. But we got to ask a fundamental question. Saudi Arabia, whose side of the football are you on? Because Saudi Arabia, MBS just went gangster on our oil industry. Okay? Now, President Trump yesterday in the Oval Office said that we're going to save it. We're going to put money back in it. We have to. Particularly the fracking industry, that's the backbone of the full spectrum energy dominance of the United States, a key part of our economy. Under Obama, half of his GDP growth came from fracking in the oil industry. It's the backbone. It's the highest paying jobs, blue collar jobs, I think the deplorables have, maybe outside of Boeing. Okay? That oil industry in the Permian Basin, up in Oklahoma, in the Marcellus Shale in Pennsylvania, and up in the North Plains and the Bakken up in North Dakota. That's the backbone of American energy, not independence, full spectrum dominance where we're now an exporter. That's why MBS in Russia came at us. The question is, hey, you guys were outside of the football in the 80s. We could not have taken down the Soviet Union. President Reagan could not have done it unless the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia was our partners. Called pump, pump, pump. Destroy the Russian oil industry. So they had very little cash flow in which to rearm or to continue their armament. That's in the book Reagan's War by Peter Schweitzer, made into a brilliant, award-winning documentary by a young documentarian, Stephen K. Bannon, called In the Face of Evil. We'll have to get that film back out. We win, they lose. That was a guy they used to mock and ridicule. You know, the reason Schweitzer did the book, here's why he did the book. He went into the KGB files. After the fall of the Soviet Union. And to the eyes of the KGB, they looked at their enemy. The one guy they feared was a governor in California who the mainstream media and Henry Kissinger thought was a kook, a wingnut. Kissinger called him, it's in the film, in the book, Henry Kissinger called Governor Reagan at the time the most dangerous man in America. And you know why? He said they're an evil empire and they got to come down. We can't have rapprochement. We can't have détente. The whole scam. Graham Allison and Kissinger, the Thucydides trap was all from the 70s, ladies and gentlemen. When I was in the Navy, this whole thing, you got to have Soviet Union's on the rise, their economy, a control economy. We got the Arab oil embargo. We have 20% interest rates. We don't know what we're doing. The West is decadent. They're confused. They're incompetent. Same scam. They're the rising power. We're the declining power. We have to have rapprochement. We have to have the salt tree. We have to have all this. Hey, Reagan goes, how big is their economy? Oh, it's the size of California. Why are we so afraid of them? We win, they lose. You cut the Chinese Communist Party today. You cut them off from Wall Street. You cut them off from the technology. You cut them off from, you seize their wealth. You strip their sovereign immunity. You let the assemblyman in New York go after them on the JASTRA as a terrorist organization. You let the Attorney General in Missouri, you let Josh Hawley, and Crenshaw and Cotton, these voices that are coming up. You field strip them of their sovereign immunity. You seize their assets. We take the $1 trillion they lent us. Hey, guess what? It's ours. Okay? There's going to be these new bonds that are talked about from 1912. You're going to see this story coming up in the next couple of weeks. They owe us $1 trillion, the deplorables. collect on that. This is not about the Chinese people. Chinese people are totally innocent here. They're the victims. It's their freedom. Whoever assists the Chinese people in their freedom in the first half of the 21st century will write the history of the 21st century. It's all on. That's what this pandemic brought up. That's what this pandemic. Remember, if they had acted like decent human beings in late December and early January, and all they had to do was say, hey, we think all they had to do is say, there's human-to-human transmission in Wuhan, and can you guys help? Okay, here's what you need. Here's what the sequencing is. They lied, suppressed it. It's not because embarrassed. They was going to metastasize. You know why they lied and suppressed it? They didn't want you to see what it was. They turned, and this was the question I got Dr. Bo. The wet market, all those videos that came out were all CCP videos. Because they want to make the people of the world think the Chinese people are barbarians, right? They're the ones that push the wet market. They want the world's people to sit there and go, man, those Chinese people, God, you can't, what's the problem with them? I'm glad they're under control by the CCP. So, Dr. Bo, this is why I can't understand, having been in China, in and around it since the 70s, the decency, the grit, the determination of the Chinese people. And you see when they combine with English common law, look at Hong Kong, the third greatest capital market in the world on a barren island. Okay, they built up from colonial times with the British and then took control themselves, right? Until we turned it back over to the CCP. The Hong Kong people with English common law in Taiwan and in Singapore, in the United States, in England. English common law and the grit, determination, and decency of the Chinese people creates miracles. So, Dr. Bo, my question is, why does the CCP treat the Chinese people? It's a 4,000-year-old civilization. Lao Beijing, the old 100 names, the most decent, hardworking folks in the world, just want to be left alone. Why do they treat the Chinese people like this?
Yes. Well, we have to understand that's a very good question. We need to understand the primary goal of CCP. What is the primary goal of CCP? Is to stay in power. Okay. CCP came into power by violence, okay, by civil war, and they stayed in power without people's approval. So what they will do is to do whatever they can to push to the extreme limit to stay in power. That can explain all kind of different things that they did, through the years, like the Cultural Revolution back in 1960s, 1970s. Cultural Revolution is coming from Mao's illusion that his grasp of power was in danger. So he started this Cultural Revolution for like 10 years just to compete with imaginary enemy, and 10 years of turmoil. Okay, total destruction of Chinese culture, and 20 million people perished. That's one example. And then the Tiananmen Square protests. That's another fine example. It's like if Chinese Communist Party has the slightest fear that their power, their totalitarian regime they control is in danger, they will go out to crush you. They will go out to crush anything that is threatening their power. So that can explain why CCP treats its own people like this. After the Tiananmen Square, they became more, they're getting smarter. They're granularized this kind of crushing down. They do not do like the full-blown and like a Tiananmen Square and then make themselves look like a butchers, in front of the whole world. They granularize these things. They try to crush every little small protest. They try to crush every single person that might have a rebellion spirit. For example, now if you are in China, if you have like say an old lady in the street, if you want to help her, you might be in trouble. If you see like a guy is bullying some weak people, if you want to interfere, and for example, if you start a fight with a guy, you will be in trouble. If your house is got a burglar is in your house, and you try to defend yourself, you fight with him, got him injured or dead, you will be in trouble because the self-defense is also punishable. because that shows people have the spirit of rebellion.
Dr. Bo, we got to jump. I appreciate you coming on. In the spirit of rebellion.
Right.
We'll be back in 1 second.
Thank you.
War Room Pandemic with Stephen K. Bannon.
The epidemic is a demon, and we cannot let this demon harm.
War Room Pandemic. Here's your host, Stephen K. Bannon.
Welcome back to War and Pandemic. We're live on Capitol Hill. It's the third Saturday of our special, Descent into Hell Part 3. The Chinese people confront the Chinese Communist Party. Now honored to have Ali join us. She's a Chinese citizen, but she's in a third country. I want to thank you for the bravery and the courage to come on. Ali, the Chinese Communist Party puts out that, hey, all this stuff is nonsense. It's just all anti-corruption. We're trying to root out the bad guys. We're trying to root out all the corruption in Chinese society, so that everything we do of this repression, the prisons, the lack of courts, all of that is to root out corruption and to help the Chinese people live a better life. What do you say about that?
Yeah, good morning, Mr. Bannon. Very glad to be with you. Okay, for this anti-corruption movement or all the propagandas, don't forget, Communist Party only utilize this as useful tools to tell the world that we are clean. But actually, they are playing a very bad two-faced trick. And these propagandas are showing that they are wearing a disgusting mask of evil. Okay, so actually, CCP rule the country by gangsterism, we know, and also by terrorism, and the anti-corruption by another corrupted group, and the anti-corruption by abusing power of police and the internet force. And at the same time, they are using the lying propaganda to tell the world that what they are, they want to let people know in the outer world of the civilized countries, while at the same time, they are doing a dirty, very bloody, dirty things to their own people. There are actually in China, there are only two classes in China. Power class, around 5% or less than that, and in the middle, and also circled by the non-power class, about 95% or more. Extreme power brings extreme corruptions. So everyone in the center is corrupted. Groups inside CCP, they fight with each other just like gangsters fight on the road, no different. So even though no gangster group or no CCP people dare to reveal the truth of CCP to outer world because the tasty life they enjoyed. Together, they could maintain their power. And another side of communists is terror. Don't forget that. They have the full power on the police, army, and all the government tools is in their hand. So they could kill you if you dare to betray them. The only one whistleblower of CCP, Mr. Miles Guo, he the only one survived and can tell the people in the outer world. That is the truth, Mr. Bannon.
Talk to us about the firewall. This is what the American people are just starting to understand, and they're confused. How can they possibly take a great people like the Chinese people and put them behind a digital firewall so they can't communicate freely with the West and they can't get information from the West and they can't tell us their stories of oppression? What is this firewall, and how important is it to come down, and how can the American people help the Chinese people in tearing down the wall?
Okay, firstly, we should know that this firewall is built by very expensive cost. That cost is Chinese people's money, their taxpayers' money. Don't forget, in China, they are the highest taxpayer in the world. The indirect tax up to 75%. During the past 20 years, from the year 2001, from China and WTO, the CCP only support group of government-owned companies until sizable to billions and trillions. CCP, the top leaders, they put their son and grandsons sit on the top of the company as directors, and they draw down loan and they invest to Americans. So they get the support from the technology support and the money support from American, from New York, from Wall Street, from European, from London, everywhere that willing to work with them. And their families had the infinity power to use taxpayers' money, to use government money, but not let you know. So all this money is the cause how they built and why they built. Because more power they have, more money they have, the higher the wall will be. And then when the people live inside, they want to confront. We want to take down the CCP. By not knowing even several minutes or several days, you will be put in the jail. So this is actually what real things for the Chinese. Their status is very worrying, actually. The normal people, if you want to have free thinking, you want to have a free speaking, by knowing what really happened, it's impossible. So you have to knock down your koto, and you have to keep on your hard working to make a life and to have to be unseen. That's the safest way for you to make a life with your family safely, continuously. That's the real situation of the Chinese people now. It's very sad, actually. If you want to have your own believings, then you will be like Uyghur, you will like Tibetan, you like Falun Gong, you will be millions of people already put in jail. No one knows. And even you are neighbors, you are not allowed to know each other. Everybody have to report to the CCP, not to communicate among your friends. That is forbidden. Yeah. So it's very important for the Americans, for the world to help us to take down the fair war. You know, without money, without technology, they will not able to build up the fair war. Because they are only the leader. They play money, they play women, they play people, but they don't know how to play technology. They don't know how to improve themselves. So please stop investing in CCP and stop cooperate or collaborate with the CCP government companies. And stop provide civilian technology, facial recognition, voice and face iris recognition technology, and then remove communist parties in China from the world organizations like WHO, like Interpol. You know, they will catch you if you dare to run away from the China. You go to anywhere in the end of the world, they will catch you back, put you in jail. That's what we need. And we need really hand in hand, Chinese people with American people. It's like World War II, 1949, 1940. We have the same enemy, Communist Party.
Ali,
that's what we have to focus.
Ali, I want to thank you for coming on. Real sign of bravery. I'm going to be doing a special Bloodvok. They'll be up tomorrow afternoon. This is the third episode, Descent into Hell Part 3. The Chinese people confront the Chinese Communist Party. We'll see you on Monday.